Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a Diablo 3 Season 25 Necromancer build guide. The Rathma Necromancer gets a huge buff. With this patch, it's going to be among the top Necromancer builds for Season 25, and in this video we're going to cover the gear, the skills, and the playstyle that you need to rock this build. The gameplay footage you're seeing in the background is by top player Wudijo, the man, the myth, the legend himself. You can also follow along with the written version of this guide made by Wudijo. Link to that below. That'll also have the most up-to-date information for this build. The written guides on maxroll.gg will always have the most up-to-date meta best tactics as the think tank of geniuses there are evolving and figuring out all the best combinations. So of course this build revolves around the Rathma set. The 2-piece bonus makes your permanent minions reduce the cooldown of Army of the Dead by half a second each time they deal damage. Your skeletal warriors spawn faster and your revived minions no longer expire. So this build, while technically a minion build, you'll have a lot of minions, is really dealing its damage via Army of the Dead, a huge Necromancer nuke that will be able to spam relatively quickly thanks to having a bunch of minions attacking very quickly, thus resetting the cooldown. The 4-piece bonus, your minions no longer take damage, you gain 1% damage reduction for 15 seconds each time one of your minions deal damage, max 75 stacks. So 75% damage reduction that we're going to maintain there. Again, we're synergizing 2 and 4-piece. We want to have lots of minions attacking very rapidly to maintain our 2 and 4-piece buffs as much as possible. And then the 6-piece. This is what got the massive buff. Each permanent active minion increases the damage of Army of the Dead by 1,750 up to 31,500. Now in our case, we're going to aim to have 17 minions for a total of 29,750% increased damage to Army of the Dead. Now we're going to combine another set here, the Zaeith set, to add another massive multiplier. When the target of your command skeleton dies, your skeletons are automatically commanded to attack a nearby target. It's just a nice quality of life, so you don't have to keep commanding them. And then while your skeletons are commanded to attack a target, you deal 400% increased damage. So as long as you see that glowing golden border around your command skeletons, you are benefiting from this 5 times damage buff. In our cube, we're going to want to have a Fate's Vow. Army of the Dead deals an additional 250% damage and gains the effect of the unconventional warfare rune. Yeah, I think hurling a mass of corpses at enemies can be considered unconventional warfare. Also, crimes against humanity. We're going to take a Crisban's Sentence Ring. You deal 100% increased damage against slowed enemies, or triple this bonus against enemies afflicted by any other type of control impairing effect. We're going to use a stun to benefit from this tripled damage buff. For our braces, we're going to take the Bonds of Kalina. Army of the Dead deals 400% increased damage, or double this bonus against an active target of command skeletons. That's really going to help against Rift Guardians, against elites. We'll also want to work in 2 pieces of the Captain Crimson set, the belt and then either the pants or the boots. The 2-piece gives us 20% cooldown and 20% resource cost reduction, and then the 3-piece makes you deal more damage based on how much cooldown reduction you have, and makes you take less damage based on how much resource cost reduction you have. And in order to equip both of these sets, the Rathma and the Captain Crimson, we're going to have in our cube a Ring of Royal Grandeur. Reduces the number of items needed for set bonuses by 1. The Ring of Royal Grandeur cannot be acquired as a drop. You have to get it from bounty bags. Do Act 1 bounty bags to get a Ring of Royal Grandeur. We'll also take a Squirt's Necklace. While you're not taking damage, damage you deal is increased by up to 100%, and damage you take is increased by up to 50%. Ultimate Glass Cannon setup. And then lastly, we're taking a convention of elements. Gain 200% increased damage to a single element for 4 seconds, rotating through your class's available elements. That said, this build isn't very rotation dependent, so you don't have to fuss too much about your convention cycle. There's not a complex rotation here. Ideally, when you're in your elemental rotation, you want to be dealing damage as opposed to running for your life. For this one in the cube, we're going to want to take a Rylina's Shadow Hook. Every point of max essence increases your damage by 0.5%, and bone spikes doesn't matter. All we care about is that damage buff. Now, Season 25 introduces items called soul shards. Very powerful items. Some can be put into weapon sockets, others can be equipped into helm sockets. For this build, your ideal weapon soul shard will be the Essence of Anguish. its base legendary power. Every time you deal poison damage to an enemy, you increase your cooldown reduction and movement speed by 2.5%, while your damage received is increased by 5% for 10 seconds, max 10 stacks. Now it should be noted that we don't actually have skills that are going to deal poison damage, so you might wonder, why are we taking a poison gem? Well, we're going to want to just ensure that our weapon is rolled to poison damage. For once in almost ever, this is one of the 1% cases in this game where the damage type of your weapon can actually make a difference. As long as your weapon damage type is rolled to poison, then you deal poison damage whenever you or your pets hit an enemy. Then when you upgrade your soul shard to max rank, you unlock one of 3 potential legendary properties, and the ideal one you'll want to get is when you deal poison damage to an enemy, they receive 50% increased poison damage from all sources for 10 seconds. And again, this will apply to all the damage that we're dealing. It sounds misleading, but that's the way it works so far. If the devs ninja hotfix this before the patch goes live, again, the written guide on maxroll.gg will clarify if any changes need to be made. Then for your helm, you'll want the Sliver of Terror. Its base legendary effect. Your cooldowns are increased by 25%. That's a bad thing. But for every skill on cooldown, you take 12.5% reduced damage and deal 25% increased damage. Massive damage buff that we could potentially stack here by having several skills on cooldown. And then the ideal rank 3 power that we want is your attack speed and crit chance are increased by 7% for each skill on cooldown. Again, just stacking much more damage here. For our regular gems, in our chest and pants, topazes for more damage. For our legendary gems, we'll want a Bane of the Trapped. More damage to crowd-controlled enemies. This synergizes tremendously with our Crisbin sentence. We're going to take a Zay's Stone of Vengeance. Damage you deal is increased for every 10 yards between you and the enemy hit, up to a max of 80% at 50 yards. 50 yards is roughly half a screen away, so if enemies are at the edge of your screen, that is the maximum bonus you can get. Also, 20% chance on hit to stun the enemy for 1 second. For your third gem, you have some options. You could go with a Molten Wildebeest's Gizzard. This is the defensive option. After not taking damage for 4 seconds, you gain an Absorb Shield. This will help you maintain your Squirt's buff. And if you're doing speed content, you probably don't need an extra damage gem. However, you can also go for a Bane of the Powerful for more damage, or you can go with the Gogok of Swiftness for more attack speed, cooldown, and a bit of dodge chance. Now before we go over exactly what we want on every piece of gear, let's first take a look at the skills. Army of the Dead Death Valley is our main damage source. Army of the Dead deals 12,000% damage on its own, but we already have the Unconventional Warfare rune applying, which is 50,000 damage. Death Valley will knock all enemies affected towards the center, applying that hard CC and grouping enemies nicely. Next we'll take Command Skeletons Frenzy. Frenzy makes commanded skeletons gain 25% increased attack speed. And again, the faster our pets are attacking, the more everything works better. Next we're going to take Simulacrum Reservoir. This creates a bloody double of ourselves, and Reservoir doubles our essence while Simulacrum is active. And remember, because of our Relenna's Shadow Hook, the more essence we have, the more damage we deal. For mobility, we're going to take Blood Rush Potency. Potency also gives us a nice defensive buff for 2 seconds after blood rushing. It also serves as another skill to have on cooldown to trigger our Sliver of Terror. Next we'll take Revive Personal Army. Damage taken is reduced by 1% for each revived minion active. We're going to have 10 revived minions, so this is 10% extra damage reduction. Lastly, we'll take Bone Armor, Thy Flesh Sustained. Bone Armor by itself gives us some nice damage reduction, and Thy Flesh Sustained is the rune you'll want to use only if you're using a Molten Wildebeest Gizzard. It increases your life per second by 10% per target hit, and the Molten Wildebeest gives us an Absorb Shield that is based on our total life per second. If you are not using a Molten Wildebeest, then you would instead want to take the Dislocation rune. This will stun enemies for 2 seconds, triggering our Crisbin's Sentence full triple bonus. For our passives, we'll take Overwhelming Essence. It increases your max essence by 40. We'll take Final Service for an extra life. We'll take Dark Reaping. While using the Zaeith, gain 2% essence and life per kill. And we'll take Draw Life. Increases your life regeneration by 10% for each enemy within 20 yards. Again though, only if we have the Molten Wildebeests. Otherwise, take Grisly Tribute. You are healed for 10% of your life on hit when one of your minions hits an enemy. That's going to be very often. So playstyle wise, you want to start by getting your minions, all 17 minions, up and active as soon as possible. After that, try not to get hit. Try to play this at range, keep away from enemies, maintain the squirts buff, keep your skeletons commanded at a target, and then when you're ready to start nuking, pop your simulacrum, and then pop your Army of the Dead. And in the thick of a battle, with enough cooldown reduction, you should be able to pop 2 Army of the Deads while you're in your physical rotation. Now, another option for you here is you can swap off of Rylina's Shadow Hook, and thus anything that's dependent on essence, and instead in your cube take Trag'Oul's Corroded Fang. While this buffs Grim Scythe, we're not taking Grim Scythe. Regardless of that, you deal 200% increased damage to cursed enemies. So if we go with that, we're going to drop Simulacrum since we don't need that anymore, and instead we'll take Decrepify Borrowed Time. Decrepify is a curse, therefore triggering our Trag'Ouls, and Borrowed Time gives us more cooldown reduction. This means we also won't need the Overwhelming Essence passive and can instead take Spreading Malediction. Receive a 1% damage bonus for each enemy afflicted by one of your curses. Both these variants of the build are very powerful. It comes down to your preference, really. As for exactly what we want on every piece of gear, on our shoulders, Intelligence, Vitality, Area Damage, Cooldown Reduction. Our helm, Intelligence, Vitality, Crit Chance. Amulet, Physical Damage, Crit Chance, Crit Damage. Our chest, Intelligence, Vitality, Armor. Gloves, Intelligence, Crit Chance, Crit Damage, Cooldown. Bracers, Physical Damage, Intelligence, Vitality, Crit Chance. Our belt, Intelligence, Vitality, Life Percent, Armor. Pants, Intelligence, Vitality, Armor. Boots, Intelligence, Vitality, All Resist, Armor. Our Crisbin Sentence, Attack Speed, Crit Chance, Cooldown. Our Convention, Crit Cooldown. Our weapon, Poison Damage, again, important, you need poison damage. Intelligence, Attack Speed, Cooldown. And our shield, Intelligence, Crit Chance, Increased Damage versus Elites, Cooldown, and Resource Cost Reduction. For our Paragon points, max out your move speed. Then, if you're using Rylina's Shadow Hook, max out your Essence. Then dump into Intelligence. If you don't have Rylina's Shadow Hook, don't put anything into Essence. And if overall you're feeling squishy, you can put enough points into Vitality to get to about 800,000 life. For offense, cooldown reduction, then attack speed, crit damage, crit chance. Defense, armor, life percent, all resist, life regen. Utility, area damage, life per hit, resource cost reduction, and pickup radius. For our follower, we'll take the Enchantress. For her skills, we're taking Temporal Pulse for the slow effect, Prophetic Harmony for the cooldown, Powered Shield for the damage reduction and armor, and Focused Mind for the attack speed. We're going to give her the Smoking Thurible relic that renders her invulnerable. We'll give her a Flavor of Time amulet which emanates to us, making our pylon effects last twice as long. Nemesis bracers so that we spawn enemy champions when we click on shrines. An Oculus ring to create golden pools on the ground. When you see those, stand in them to gain a damage buff. Ice climbers to make her immune to immobilize effects. Then for more attack speed, Mempo of Twilight, Talrasha's chest, Witching Hour, and 2-piece of canes. For the stat priority on her gear, intelligence everywhere. Her abilities scale off of intelligence and she can't die, so there's no real need for anything defensive. And that's gonna wrap up this video. But do stay tuned for more video guides. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.